Some stories unfold quietly. Others explode into public conflict. And the situation surrounding the Whittaker family has now entered a phase that looks less like a discussion and more like a full-scale online war. Because tonight, accusations are flying in every direction. Messages are being shared. Private conversations are being referenced. And several people who claim to care about the Whittakers are now openly attacking each other. What started as concern for a vulnerable family has turned into something else entirely. A battle over credibility, a battle over influence, and a battle over who the public should believe. The latest round of accusations began when a message started circulating between several online creators discussing the Whittaker situation. According to the claims being repeated, one individual allegedly attempted to uncover personal information about another creator in order to retaliate for criticism. In internet culture, there's a name for that. Doxing. The act of exposing private information about someone online in order to intimidate them, embarrass them, or pressure them into silence. And while accusations of doxing are unfortunately common during internet conflicts, the seriousness of those claims cannot be ignored. Because once personal information becomes weaponized online, the consequences can quickly move beyond the internet. Threats, harassment, real-world safety concerns. That is why most platforms treat doxing as a serious violation. And yet here we are again. Another escalation in a story that already carries far too much tension. The accusations don't stop there. Some messages circulating online claim that certain creators involved in the Whittaker discussions may be earning significant income through their content while presenting themselves as struggling financially. Those claims go further. Some allege that money donated by supporters may not always be used the way viewers assume. Others accuse specific individuals of monetizing controversy rather than focusing on helping the family. To be clear, these are accusations, not proven facts. But the fact that these allegations are being shared publicly shows just how fractured the Whittaker conversation has become. Instead of unity around helping the family, we now see multiple factions forming. One group believes certain creators are genuinely advocating for the Whittakers. Another group believes some individuals are exploiting the story for views, attention, and revenue. And once those divisions form, every new piece of information becomes fuel for the conflict. Screenshots get posted. Emails get forwarded. Rumors get amplified. Each side claims they are exposing the truth. But the louder the conflict becomes, the easier it is to forget the people at the center of this entire situation. The Whittaker family. The individuals who lived quietly and odd long before the internet ever discovered them. For them, the drama unfolding online is something they never asked for. They did not organize these arguments. They did not create these channels. They did not choose to become the subject of thousands of heated debates between strangers. Yet their lives are the foundation for every argument now taking place. That is part of what makes this situation so uncomfortable to watch. Because when the focus shifts from helping a vulnerable family to fighting over influence, something important gets lost. Perspective. And that perspective matters now more than ever. One of the most serious claims circulating involves a message allegedly sent by someone who says they have been following the Whittaker situation closely for years. In that message, the writer describes visiting the property in the past and witnessing conditions that they say were extremely difficult. The message describes strong odors inside the home and living conditions that left a lasting impression even years later. According to the writer, those experiences are part of the reason they believe the state may never allow the family to return to the exact circumstances they lived in before. If that claim is accurate, it would explain why authorities stepped in when they did. But again, the key word is if. Because messages shared online are not official reports. They are personal accounts. And personal accounts require verification before they can be treated as confirmed fact. Still, the message raises another important point. The situation surrounding the Whittakers may be far more complicated than any single video or post can explain. Some people insist the family should be reunited immediately. Others argue that protective services stepped in for legitimate reasons. Those two perspectives collide constantly in online discussions. And now, with accusations of harassment and retaliation entering the conversation, the situation has become even more volatile. One creator claims that months of harassment have pushed them to begin collecting evidence of threats and abusive messages. They say they are documenting everything. Screenshots, emails, messages. According to them, some supporters of rival channels have gone beyond criticism and into direct intimidation. If those claims are accurate, they could eventually move from online drama into legal territory, because threats, harassment, and coordinated targeting can carry real consequences when documented and reported. And this is where the story begins to take a darker turn. What started as debates about helping a struggling family may now be escalating toward something more serious. Legal complaints, platform investigations, and potential action against channels accused of spreading harassment. But even in the middle of all this conflict, one question continues to surface again and again. What about the Whittakers themselves? What happens to the family while all these battles rage online? Because the reality is that every new accusation pulls attention further away from their actual situation. Instead of focusing on medical care, housing stability, and long-term support, the conversation becomes dominated by internet rivalries. And that is exactly the kind of chaos that vulnerable families often get trapped inside. In Part 2, we're going to look at the messages that allegedly reveal new information about Timmy's current situation, including claims that he may have been temporarily placed in a type of hotel-style housing arrangement after being removed from the family property. Those claims raise even more questions about where things stand today, and whether the public actually understands what is happening behind the scenes. When a story becomes this public, every small detail can suddenly feel enormous. A single message, a single screenshot, a single comment, and suddenly thousands of people begin asking the same question. Is this real? That is exactly what happened when a message began circulating online describing where Timmy might have been staying after the state removed several members of the Whittaker household from their property in Odd. The message claimed that Timmy had temporarily been placed in what was described as a hotel-type living arrangement. Not a traditional hotel room, but something closer to an extended-stay apartment. A place with a small kitchen. A place with basic living space. A place used in situations where temporary housing is needed while longer-term plans are arranged. For people unfamiliar with social services, that description might sound strange. Why would someone placed under state care end up in a hotel-like environment? But those familiar with how certain emergency placements work say it is not as unusual as it sounds. In some situations, when facilities are full or when a person requires short-term monitoring while assessments are completed, agencies sometimes use temporary housing units. These are often extended-stay hotel rooms or efficiency-style apartments. They are easier to supervise than traditional housing, and they can be arranged quickly. Again, it is important to stress something. The claims about Timmy being in such a location are based on messages circulating online. They are not confirmed official statements. But the idea itself is not unrealistic. Temporary placements like that have been used before, especially in cases where vulnerable adults require supervision, but long-term arrangements have not yet been finalized. The message that started spreading online included another detail that caught people's attention. It claimed that at one point a photograph surfaced showing Timmy inside a room that appeared to match the layout of one of these extended-stay facilities. According to the message, some observers tried to compare the image with publicly available photos of similar hotel-style units. They believed the layouts matched, but there was a complication. Another detail did not match. Timmy's hair length. In the image that circulated online, Timmy's hair appeared longer than in later photos that appeared afterward. Because of that difference, some people concluded that the image could not have been taken at the same time the message described. In other words, the photograph may have been from an earlier moment, or may have been something unrelated entirely. And that is one of the biggest challenges with viral investigations conducted by strangers online. Images get analyzed, timelines get guessed, connections get assumed, but without official verification, those theories remain speculation. Still, the discussion revealed something important. People desperately want to understand what is happening to the Whittaker family behind the scenes. For years, the public watched their daily lives through videos shared online. They saw them on the porch. They saw them interacting with visitors. They saw the small routines of a family living together in a remote Appalachian community. Then suddenly, that access stopped. Authorities intervened. 3 members of the household were removed from the property. And since that moment, information has been limited. Confidentiality laws surrounding vulnerable adults mean that social services rarely release updates about their location or care arrangements. That silence frustrates many viewers, but it exists for a reason: privacy protection, especially when individuals cannot fully advocate for themselves. Still, silence creates a vacuum, and when there is a vacuum, speculation fills the space. That is exactly what we are seeing now. Some people believe Timmy is receiving improved medical care and supervision. Others believe he may feel isolated away from the only environment he has ever known. Both possibilities are emotionally powerful, and without confirmed updates, both narratives continue spreading. Another part of the message that circulated online described conditions inside the Whittaker home before authorities intervened. The writer claimed that the smell inside the house was extremely strong. So strong, they said, that even years later they could still remember it clearly. If that account is accurate, it would reinforce concerns that living conditions had become difficult. But again, this is one person's recollection, not an official inspection report. And in situations like this, it is critical to separate personal testimony from verified documentation. Because when stories become emotional, memories and interpretations can sometimes grow more dramatic over time. What matters more than any individual description is what authorities concluded after evaluating the situation. And that information has not been fully shared publicly. Which brings us back to the biggest unanswered question. What is actually happening with Timmy right now? Is he in temporary housing? Has he been moved to a longer-term care environment? Is he receiving medical evaluations that were difficult to obtain before? Or is the process still unfolding? The truth may be that all of those possibilities are part of a longer transition. When vulnerable adults are placed under state supervision, assessments can take time. Doctors evaluate health needs. Social workers evaluate living environments. Legal authorities review guardianship arrangements. Every step is designed to ensure that decisions about a person's future are made carefully. But careful processes rarely move quickly. And in the absence of official updates, online communities begin building their own narratives. Some hopeful, some fearful, some angry. That emotional intensity is exactly what has fueled the conflict between different creators covering the Whittaker story. Because each group believes they understand the situation better than the others. Some believe they are exposing wrongdoing. Others believe they are defending the family against exploitation. But as those groups argue, the real situation continues evolving behind closed doors. Doctors continue evaluations. Legal teams continue reviewing documentation. State agencies continue determining what long-term support might look like. And the Whittaker family remains at the center of a storm they never asked for. Which leads to another critical issue: money. Because while people debate living arrangements and legal oversight, another controversy has been quietly building. Questions about where money connected to the Whittaker story has gone. Donations. Content revenue. Fundraising efforts. Supporters want to know how those funds have been used. And critics want accountability. Those questions have now become a major part of the conflict between online creators discussing the Whittaker situation. If there is one element that has repeatedly intensified the conflict surrounding the Whittaker story, it is money. Not just the existence of money, but the uncertainty around it. When the world first discovered the family living quietly and odd, many viewers reacted the same way. They wanted to help. They saw a family that had lived for years with limited resources, and they believed that public attention could bring meaningful support. And in the beginning, that support did appear. Donations were collected. Home improvements were discussed. Groceries and supplies were reportedly delivered. People believed they were contributing to something positive. But whenever money enters a story like this, questions follow. Who is collecting it? Who controls it? And most importantly, who is responsible for making sure it reaches the people it was meant for? Over time, different individuals began claiming that they were helping manage financial support connected to the Whittakers. Some said they were covering expenses. Others said they were coordinating donations. Still others claimed they were creating online content that generated revenue intended to benefit the family. That is where the confusion began, because those claims did not always match. Some supporters believed that certain creators were owning advertising revenue through videos about the Whittakers and using that income to assist them. Others believed that the same creators were keeping the majority of the funds while presenting themselves as advocates. And once those accusations appeared, the debate escalated quickly. One claim that has circulated repeatedly involves a contract that allegedly existed between a content creator and members of the Whittaker family. According to the accusation, the contract outlined how revenue connected to videos or online exposure would be shared. But critics argue that the payments the family actually received may have been far smaller than what supporters believed. Some claim the family received only small amounts of money, along with occasional groceries and supplies. If that claim is true, it raises serious questions. But once again, it is important to emphasize something. These are accusations. They have been repeated in discussions, messages, and videos, but the exact details of any agreement have not been fully verified in public records. Still, the perception of financial imbalance has fueled enormous anger among some viewers. Many supporters feel protective of the Whittakers. They worry that a vulnerable family may have been placed in a situation where they did not fully understand how online media works. If someone unfamiliar with internet monetization agrees to appear in videos, they may not realize how much revenue those videos could generate. Advertising, sponsorships, audience donations, all of those revenue streams can grow quickly when a story goes viral. And if the people appearing in the content do not have legal representation or financial advisors, it becomes difficult to ensure they receive a fair share. That concern is part of what triggered the current wave of accusations. Some individuals now claim that multiple creators may have benefited financially from the Whittaker story over the years. Not just one person, not just one platform, several different channels and personalities. If those claims are accurate, the situation becomes much more complicated, because it means responsibility would not fall on one individual alone. It would involve an entire ecosystem of content built around the Whittaker story. That ecosystem includes videos, live streams, reaction channels, commentary channels, and social media groups dedicated to discussing the family. Some creators defend their involvement strongly. They argue that without their coverage, the Whittakers would never have received the assistance they did. They say the exposure brought attention to a forgotten situation and allowed thousands of people to offer help. Others strongly disagree. They argue that the family's story became entertainment, that the attention may have crossed the line between awareness and exploitation, and that vulnerable individuals should never become the center of monetized internet drama. Those two perspectives are now colliding in a very public way. One side says exposure helped. The other side says exposure harmed. And the truth may lie somewhere between those extremes. Because exposure can do both. It can bring support, but it can also bring opportunists. Another part of the financial debate focuses on donations sent directly by viewers. When audiences feel emotionally connected to a story, they often want to contribute. They send money. They send gifts. They send supplies. But those donations are usually routed through someone. A channel owner, a fundraiser organizer, a third-party payment service. That means trust becomes essential. Supporters must trust that the person collecting donations is using them honestly. And once that trust breaks, the damage spreads quickly. Some people now claim they no longer know who to trust in the Whittaker story. They hear one creator accuse another. Then another creator responds with their own accusations. Screenshots appear. Private messages get leaked. Old disagreements resurface. And suddenly the original goal, helping a vulnerable family, becomes buried under layers of personal conflict. One of the most revealing aspects of this financial debate is how often viewers themselves express frustration. Many supporters say they donated because they believed the family needed help. They did not donate because they wanted to support online feuds. They did not donate because they wanted to fund creator rivalries. They donated because they cared about Timmy, Lorraine, and the rest of the family. When those supporters begin to feel manipulated, the backlash can be intense. Because generosity depends on trust. And once trust disappears, it is very difficult to rebuild. That is part of the reason why the Whittaker situation has become so volatile. People feel emotionally invested. They feel protective. And when they suspect that someone may have taken advantage of that goodwill, the reaction can be fierce. At the same time, accusations alone do not establish guilt. Financial disputes require documentation, contracts, payment records, legal review. Without those things, much of the debate remains speculation. And speculation is exactly what has driven the current online war between creators covering the story. Each side believes they are exposing the truth. Each side believes the other side is hiding something. And as those accusations grow louder, the situation becomes even more chaotic. But one question continues to hang over the entire debate. What happens next? Because if accusations about financial exploitation become serious enough, they could move beyond online arguments. They could become legal investigations. They could involve courts. They could involve financial records being examined under oath. And if that happens, the Whittaker story could enter an entirely new phase. When accusations continue long enough, they eventually reach a point where people stop arguing and start taking action. That appears to be the stage the Whittaker controversy is now entering. Because the conflict between creators discussing the family is no longer limited to videos, live streams, and comment sections. Now there are growing claims that complaints are being filed. Reports are being submitted. And some individuals say they are preparing formal actions against channels they believe have crossed the line. In other words, the fight may be moving from the internet into official systems. And once that happens, the rules change. For months, critics and supporters of different creators have been trading accusations online. Some accuse others of spreading misinformation. Some accuse others of harassment. Others say certain channels have encouraged followers to target specific individuals with insults, threats, or coordinated reporting. At first, these disputes played out in familiar internet fashion. Videos responding to videos. Comments responding to comments. But gradually, some creators began saying that the attacks had gone too far. They claim they have received threatening messages. They claim their personal information has been shared. They claim supporters of rival channels have attempted to intimidate them or pressure them into silence. Whether those claims are true or exaggerated is difficult to determine without full evidence. But one thing is certain. Several people now say they are documenting everything. screenshots, emails, direct messages, clips from videos. They say they are saving it all. Because if harassment crosses certain legal thresholds, documentation becomes the key piece of evidence. One creator recently said they have already collected months of messages and posts that they believe show a pattern of targeted harassment. According to that claim, the goal is not just to defend themselves publicly, but potentially to pursue legal complaints if necessary. If that happens, the situation could escalate quickly. Because once harassment allegations move into legal territory, investigators may begin examining communications, content history, and financial activity connected to the dispute. And that brings us back to another layer of the controversy: platform enforcement. Many people involved in the Whittaker discussions rely on video platforms for their audience. And those platforms have rules. Rules about harassment, rules about copyright, rules about privacy, rules about spreading personal information. When creators accuse each other of violating those rules, the next step often involves filing complaints with the platform itself. Some individuals now claim that reports have already been submitted regarding certain channels involved in the Whittaker debates. These reports reportedly include accusations such as harassment, encouraging targeted attacks, using other creators' videos without permission, and spreading private information. If platforms receive enough credible complaints, they sometimes investigate the situation. Those investigations can result in warnings, content removal, temporary suspensions, or in extreme cases, full channel termination. However, platform investigations usually take time, and they often rely on very specific evidence. A single complaint rarely leads to immediate action, but multiple reports from different users can trigger closer review. That possibility has created a new atmosphere of tension among the creators involved in the Whittaker story. Because now the stakes are higher. This is no longer just about reputation. It could affect entire channels, entire audiences, entire sources of income. And when people feel their platforms are threatened, conflicts often become even more intense. Another issue being raised during these disputes involves copyright. Several creators claim that their videos have been copied or reused by others without permission. They argue that their work is being republished by rival channels attempting to build their own audiences. To fight that, some say they are preparing copyright strikes. A copyright strike is a formal complaint filed through a platform when someone believes their original content has been used without authorization. If a channel receives multiple strikes within a certain time period, it can face serious consequences. That means the Whittaker controversy is now expanding into multiple fronts at once. Personal accusations, harassment claims, financial disputes, and copyright conflicts, all of it playing out while thousands of viewers watch and debate the situation daily. But the biggest danger of this escalation is something that many observers have already pointed out. The Whittaker family themselves have almost completely disappeared from the center of the discussion. Instead of focusing on Timmy's health, instead of discussing Lorraine's well-being, instead of asking what long-term support the family needs, much of the conversation now revolves around creator rivalries. Who said what? Who reported who? Who copied whose video? Who insulted who? The people at the center of the story have become secondary characters in their own narrative. And that raises a difficult question. How did a story about helping a vulnerable family turn into a full-scale internet conflict? The answer may be simpler than it appears. Attention. The Whittaker story attracts enormous attention. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Strong emotional reactions. Whenever that much attention gathers around a topic, different personalities are drawn toward it. Some want to document, some want to investigate, some want to advocate, and some want to build an audience. Over time, those motivations collide. And once they collide, cooperation becomes difficult. Competition replaces it. That is exactly what we are witnessing now. Competing narratives, competing creators, competing claims about who truly represents the interests of the Whittaker family. The result is a conflict that grows larger each week. But behind all the arguments and accusations, one reality remains unchanged. The Whittakers themselves are still navigating a major transition in their lives. After authorities intervened at their property in Odd, the family situation entered a phase controlled largely by social services, legal oversight, and medical evaluation. Those processes move slowly. They rarely provide public updates, and they often remain confidential, which means that while the internet debates and fights, the real decisions affecting the Whittaker family are happening quietly behind the scenes. Doctors are evaluating needs. Social workers are assessing support options. Legal authorities are reviewing guardianship and placement issues. None of that makes dramatic videos, but it is the work that will determine the family's future. And that future may look very different from the life they once lived. In Part 5, we'll step back from the accusations and conflicts and look at the bigger picture. Because the Whittaker story is no longer just about one family in rural Appalachia. It has become a case study in something much larger. What happens when vulnerable lives collide with internet fame? And what responsibility the public carries once that spotlight appears? At this point, the Whittaker story has moved far beyond the quiet porch where most people first encountered the family. What began as curiosity turned into sympathy. Sympathy turned into attention, and attention eventually turned into conflict. Now the situation surrounding the family from Odd has become something much larger than any single video or creator. It has become a mirror for how the internet handles vulnerable people. On one side are viewers who truly care about what happens to Timmy, Lorraine, and the rest of the family. Many of them donated money, shared the story, and believed their support could help improve lives that had long been overlooked. On the other side is the reality that online attention brings competition. Different creators want to control the narrative. Different groups believe they know what is best. And when that happens, arguments replace cooperation. The result is the chaos we see today. Accusations, investigations, creators threatening copyright strikes, others promising legal action. Meanwhile, the people at the center of the story remain largely silent, navigating a system of doctors, social workers, and courts that will ultimately determine their future. And that may be the most important truth to remember. The internet did not create the Whittakers' challenges, but it did magnify them. Now the responsibility falls on everyone watching to ask better questions, to demand accountability without spreading rumors, and to remember that behind every headline, every video, and every argument are real people whose lives will continue long after the cameras move on. The question now isn't who wins the YouTube war. The question is whether the Whittakers finally receive the stability and protection they deserve.